Okay, let's get started with chapter 3 on simple meter. So, if you haven't done so already, please open up the lecture slides for chapter 3 on simple meter. And let's start off here on slide number 1. So, to start off, let's just establish a steady beat by clapping, right? So just like that, okay? Now, let's instead of just let's clap louder on every other beat. So how about start with a loud one and then not a loud one. So like right? So we could think of this as like strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. Okay. Now, let's move on to our next slide. So, slide number 2. So, accents, right? We were just basically doing that. Sounds that are stressed, right? Your louder claps or your stronger claps, for example, are said to be accented. And the musical symbol for an accent is kind of this sideways triangle that you see here on slide number 2. And the pattern that you were just clapping could be notated as what we see on slide number 2 here, where we have an accented beat followed by a unaccented beat, one that's a little bit weaker, right? So we might have like accent, accent, accent. So the accented ones are louder, right? They're stronger, or we could say they're stressed. All right, moving on to slide number 3. Let's talk about meter. So meter is basically what we were just doing. It's a regular pattern of stressed and unstressed beats, okay? And so most music has these regular patterns of stress. And meter can be classified by the number of beats in the pattern, okay? And so in the pattern that we were just doing, we can say that there are 2 beats. It's a 2-beat pattern, okay? And the first beat is a stressed beat or an accented beat, and the second one, right, is an unstressed beat, okay? And so we might we might even count this in 2. So we might go like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, where 1 is the accented one and beat 2 is the unaccented one. Try it again. Go 1, 2, 1, 2. Strong, weak. 1, 2. Okay, so this can be also called duple meter, okay? Because it's a 2-beat pattern, right? Duple refers to 2. So duple meter, right? This is a regular pattern of one stressed and then another unstressed beats. Call that duple. All right, let's move on to slide number 4. Now clap this pattern that we see on slide number 4. Notice first that we have an accented beat followed by 2 weak beats. So you have accented and then unaccented and then unaccented, or strong, weak, weak. Let's try it. So go strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. All right, so this is a pattern of 3, right? We have strong, weak, weak. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And we can call this triple meter, all right? Because it's a pattern of 3, right? 1 strong and then 2 weak. 1, 2, 3, right? Triple. All right, so that's going to be, well, that's basically triple meter. Let's go to the next slide. So now what do we have? We have 4. We have 1 strong followed by 3 weak, right? A strong and then weak, weak, weak. Go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Strong, weak, weak, weak. Strong, weak, weak, weak. Or you can count it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? So we can call this quadruple meter. Okay? Because there's 4 in this pattern. All right. So we talked about duple meter, we talked about triple meter, and now quadruple meter. Those are going to be the basic meters that we're going to talk about for this chapter called simple meter. All right. Let's move on to our next slide. All right. So let's talk about something called a bar line. We're going to talk about bar lines and measures now. And these are types of notation that help us organize these meters. All right, so let's check these out. So a bar line. So meter, right? We talked about duple meter, triple meter, quadruple meter. So meter is notated using a vertical line called a bar line, as we see on the graphic here on slide number 6. And it goes across the staff, okay? Simple as that. Remember, the staff are those 5 horizontal lines on which we place notes. But the bar line is this vertical line that goes across the staff. Let's look at the next slide here. Slide number 7. So bar lines are drawn between each group of beats in a meter, right? So we see here with slide number 7 on the graphic here, we see these bar lines now that are kind of marking off these group of beats in a meter. So the one labeled duple meter, we see 2 beats in each. We see 2 beats and then a bar line. 2 beats and then a bar line. 2 beats and then a bar line, right? And then for the one labeled triple meter, what do we see? 3 beats and then a bar line. 3 more beats, then a bar line. 3 beats, then a bar line. And then for quadruple meter, all right, you guessed it, right? 4 beats and then a bar line. 4 beats and then a bar line. 4 beats and then a bar line, etc. Okay, so those are bar lines. Now let's move on to slide number 8. Talk about measure. What's a measure? So the music between 2 bar lines is called a measure. Okay? So bar lines identify the end of each measure. So we can see on the graphic here on slide number 8, we see a measure, right? We see one measure, and we see a bar line at the beginning of the measure, and we see a bar line at the end of the measure. Okay? So measures are also points of reference that will help you locate specific places in the music. When I teach, and I'm teaching guitar or music in general, I might we might be looking at a piece of music that is, actually let's look at one real quick here. So it's like a short piece of music right here. We'll look at this one. And we can see how many measures do we have? 1, so that's hard to see for me, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 measures. Now, if I'm a teacher and my student is working on this little piece of music, and my student may be having trouble on this one, on this measure, I might say, you need to practice measure number 4, right? And I'm referring to just this measure. I might say, it's pretty good. The whole thing's pretty good, but measure number 4, we need to fix. We need to make sure you're observing these these rests or something like that, right? So it's a way to refer to measures as a way to help locate specific places in any given piece of music. All right, so let's move on to our next slide. Okay, so we've talked so far about meter a little bit, right? We talked about duple meter, triple meter, quadruple meter. We talked about bar lines, and we talked about measures. All right, so now let's talk about another idea here to do with simple meter in this chapter, called the meter signature. So meter, right? Again, when I'm saying meter, I'm meaning duple meter, triple meter, quadruple meter. Meter is also indicated by something called a meter signature, also known as a time signature. Actually, maybe more often known as a time signature. That's the term I mostly use. But meter signature, time signature means the same thing. So the meter signature or the time signature consists of two numbers, right? We have an upper number and we have a lower number. So as we see here on the graphic here on slide number 9, we see the upper number is 2 and the lower number is 4. Let's look at some more meter signatures on the next slide here, number 10. So each of these numbers, right, the upper number and the lower number, they give us pieces of information to help us understand the music. So let's talk about these two numbers now. Let's start with the lower number, actually. So the lower number indicates the kind of rhythm that receives one beat. Okay, so if we see, how about, well, let's look at this little example here. So we have our upper number and we have our lower number, right? So the lower number is a 4 in this case, right? So the lower number is 4, and this tells us that the kind of rhythm that receives one beat is a quarter note, right? So if we see a 4, that indicates quarter note. All right? And so if we see, for example, in another kind of meter signature, you might have an 8 underneath. And an 8 would indicate that the 8th note receives one beat. Okay? Do you ever do fractions? So one way to sort of maybe make this clearer in reference to the lower number, we can just take the number 4, right? And maybe take like another piece of paper and write a 4, right? Like this, okay? And then go make it into a fraction, just put a 1 above it. What do we have? A quarter, right? 1/4 is this fraction. And so that's how we can sort of tell what kind of note receives one beat. A quarter note, in this case, receives one beat. Well, in this case. Okay, so now let's talk about the upper number. So the upper number indicates the number of beats per measure. All right, so in this case, how many beats per measure? We have 3 beats per measure. All right. So let's put this into action a little bit here. So looking at our graphic here on slide number 10, we see A, B, and C, right? Let's look at number A. So A has this time signature of 3, 4, right? So if we're looking at the number, so how many beats per measure do we have? We have 3 beats per measure, right? And I wrote these out in the book here. So 1, 2, 3, and then here's my next measure, right? So I got to start on 1 again, 1, 2, 3. So I've got 3 beats in this measure, 3 beats in this measure. And I know that because I have my time signature says 3 for the upper number, right? And then I know that the quarter note, right, because the 4 here tells me that I've got the quarter note gets 1 beat. So here's a quarter note, gets 1 beat. Here's another quarter note, it gets another beat, right? Here's another quarter note, and here's 2 eighth notes, but remember 2 eighth notes. Eighth notes are half beats, so a half plus a half equals 1 quarter. So this fits inside 1 beat. Let's practice this measure only. Let's practice clapping it. So just go, so we're looking at that 1 measure, A here. Go 1, 2, 3, right? So beat number 3, you have to clap twice, right? Because you have 2 eighth notes. Do it one more time. Go 1, or go ready, go. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Now, let's practice the next measure. Or the next measure being right here. Right, so this one is just what? We have 3 quarter notes in a row, and it's just going to be 1, 2, 3. Okay? Let's do the whole thing now. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay? So let's look at the next example, B. So for B, what do we have here? We have 4, 8. Okay, so we know the bottom number tells us what kind of rhythm gets 1 beat. So in this case, an eighth note gets 1 beat, right? And and the top number, the upper number, means we're going to have 4 beats per measure. So if we look at B here, we see that we can count it like this, right? We have 4 eighth notes here for the first measure. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So if we're going to clap that first measure, we're just going to clap 4 beats, and every one. So try this: 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's the first measure of B. Then the next measure of B, what do we have? We have 2 quarter notes, right? One here and one there. And so each quarter note is going to receive now 2 beats in 4/8 time. Like 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's practice that whole example of B. Ready, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.